Welcome to another episode of Tell the Tape. Tonight we're going to be joined by Coach Miriam Tesfamikael. Hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm definitely going to ask for the correct pronunciation once she taps in. A lot of people call her Coach T. Thank you for joining Coach T so early. Hey,
Hi,
Coach. How are you
how are
doing?
you? I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Coach T, just want to start this off. How do you pronounce your last name so I can say it correctly?
Tesfamikael.
Tesfamike. Okay.
Yeah,
Definitely appreciate that.
yeah,
Again, thanks for joining us today.
no problem. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, of course. First I want to start off with your basketball background. You played in Missouri, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Missouri and Columbia.
Okay.
Played AU like third grade on, and
Okay.
then yeah, went to high school there, and then moved to Chicago and played my first couple of years at the University of Chicago.
Okay. What was that experience like playing at University of Chicago?
It was different.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was cool. It was a huge team, so for me personally, it was just different than any team I had been on before.
Okay.
It wasn't that typical like close knit environment because there's so many of us, and then like you're thrown into a new situation just being at college. So it was definitely an interesting experience for sure.
Let's take a step back. Your
All right,
high school team did a lot of winning, correct?
you said my high school team?
Yeah, your high school team.
Yeah. we
But
good.
no, I was gonna say how big was like your team? I watched the interview with for the coaches. I previewed that,
Yeah.
and you had talked about that the girls basketball team was way bigger than the boys basketball team.
Yeah. So our school was at the time 5A was the largest in the state as far as like classes went. So we were a 5A school. So as far as like our school went in terms of size, we had like about 3,000
Oh
students,
yeah.
somewhere around that. But we didn't have freshmen in the building. So that's not even counting. Like we couldn't fit freshmen in the building. So there's only two high schools where in the city where I grew up at that time. Now they've expanded.
Okay.
So yeah, my junior year, our team, I think we went on like a 30 game win streak at one point. Like we lost early on to like this team right out of Chicago, and then just like never looked back all the way to
Okay.
state. We lost a tough one that we don't talk about
Okay.
as much, but
Leave it there.
but no, we were good. I'm still like really good friends with two of my old teammates, so we talk regularly.
Okay. What about senior year? Did y'all go back senior year or?
Senior year, so like the way it's set up, you play districts, and then if you win your district, then you go to like quarterfinals, semifinals, and then final four. And we lost in the championship game, like the district championship game, to like our
Gotcha.
crosstown rivals. So a lot of our team, my junior year, we had a lot of seniors, or there was seven of us that really played, and out of that seven, like five of us or two of us were returning. So
Okay.
we
Yeah.
lost like the core of our team right before our
Yeah.
senior year. Yeah.
Okay. And then what was your personal recruitment process like? Like what was that for you?
It was interesting. I mean, obviously, I was just talking to one of the parents of our boys at Springbrook about just kind of how to navigate this upcoming year as far as like recruitment goes. And I was just, as I was recalling it, it made me feel old because I was like, yeah, like people would send like VHSs and like that was the thing. Like you made your tape. Like there was no like send me this YouTube link. So it was a lot of, like I said, I played basketball or AU since third grade. So it was a lot of like going to camps, going to tournaments, and then hearing literally just kind of by mail from different coaches and
Okay.
different schools. And so um, some coaches would come by like and check out a practice, if they couldn't come to a game because they're in season as well. Um, so it was super random. Like the schools I was looking at like ranged from Boston to North Dakota. And it just like it didn't make any sense, but it was just like whoever was at whatever tournament that caught you on a good day was like how
Yeah.
you got your foot in the door. So um as far as like specifically how I got to Chicago, like my sister played there before I did, and so there was
Okay.
kind of so she kind of I guess like set the stage for me a little bit. At least there was like, oh, okay, like she's got this sister. Bam.
Okay.
And, yeah.
All right. So what about playing up there at University of Chicago? What was that experience like?
Personally, I did not love my experience. Just
Okay.
because I think growing up in a small town in Missouri and then like playing AU with like the same people you played for like 10 years, right? Like a lot of my experience of playing basketball was like built on relationships.
Okay.
And just like, you're really just rocking with the people you're playing with. And it was low key a culture shock because when I got to Chicago, even though we're in Chicago, I think I had 2 black teammates out of like 18 people, right, at the time. And so like that was odd. It was different. And then we just didn't have similar interests. At the end of the day, like there was, I just, there felt that there was kind of a divide. Like I had my friend group outside of that, but you spent a lot of time grinding with basketball. And so it was just not working for me. And then it being like a rigorous school academically, I was like, these are too many things for me to personally juggle. So yeah, when I found out that I got into a study abroad program overseas, I was like, well, I think this is the perfect time to see what else is out there.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that at all, though. There's nothing wrong with that. So how did you make the transition into coaching? I saw that you helped with the middle school. Was that while you were in college or as soon as you graduated?
Yeah. So talk about throwing another thing into so I had heard about this non-for-profit program that was basically getting like college students into coaching. And I heard about it through a friend and I was like, oh, that sounds dope. Like, let me look into it. And this is like my first year of college, where I started to like look into it. And then there was like a school like a Catholic school that was in walking distance to our campus. And so I got hooked up over there and started with the girls team. And that was the first year that I was there. So I'm literally like going to class, going to basketball practice, going to games and then doing this because their games were very much set like in a particular window on the weekends. And so yeah, that's kind of how I got them foot in the door. I was just like, all right, like it was volunteer. So it was just basically like, hey, just figure out if you like this thing. Cause I think early on I was trying to figure out what does life after basketball look like, like after playing. And so that's kind of how I started dabbling into, the study abroad program. I started grad school early, getting into teaching and coaching. And so it was just a way to see, like, do you actually like this thing? Is this something for you? And then I didn't look back.
Okay. And I also saw that you said you wanted to do boys because you had really high expectations for girls.
Yeah. Okay. So I get this question a lot, and so okay. growing up like playing basketball, I got to experience a lot of like great basketball competition at my time growing up. And so when I got to the school that I was volunteering at, they were not so good. Like girls basketball just like wasn't a thing. It was just like, I'm out here for exercise. And I was like, I don't want to like teach the fundamentals in sense of like, this is how you dribble and this is how you shoot layup and what. And not to say that boys don't have a starting place too, but at that time, when you're seeing the middle school boys team and the girls team, it's like apples and oranges at that point. Just, based on a lot of the boys just, play basketball on the weekends or every day or at recess or whatever. And so I was like, I just kind of want to surpass that bump in the road because I know that it's challenging. And I was like, well, I've done girls basketball. That was my life. Like, give me a different challenge. Like, let me. So that's the reason why.
Okay, yeah, I read it and I was like, I just want to hear why. So.
Yeah, no, and interesting enough, like I was talking with somebody in our county earlier this year, and there was a girls' job that opened up in MCPS at like a really good girls basketball program school. They just happened to be one of our rival schools, and so like the Blue Devil in me for Springbrook, I was like, I can't in good faith like teach here and go there, but like that would be an ideal situation. So I'm definitely open to it in the future.
Okay. How long did you work with the boys middle school team?
So I started my freshman year. Yeah, so I worked with them for 3 seasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is that when you moved on to Woodlawn Charter?
Yeah, because and then it was like 2 or 3 seasons, and then where it gets foggy is my last year of college, my 4th year of college. I also started my grad program, and so
Got
I
it.
took a gap year, like my first year of teaching, and so I did not teach that first year that I started teaching at Woodlawn Charter School. It was a 6 to 12 school, so I taught in the middle school. And so I took that first year off because I was like, let's just see what teaching is about for a second. And then I had the itch to come back. And so my second year there, I coached there.
Okay. And can you explain Woodlawn Charter? I was looking into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of charter schools in DC. So was the school funded by the University of Chicago?
Yeah,
Or
so it still gets partial funding from the city, but yeah,
okay.
they get a lot of their funding from the University of Chicago. So it's basically south of the college campus.
Okay.
So they had now they have 3 schools in their network, but there's like 4 schools in their like U Chicago network, and so we were one of the 2 middle schools, but we had the one high school of the network attached to our school. So University of Chicago Woodlawn Charter School is 6 through 12, so kids usually would stay the whole time there. I mean, it's still free, it's not for profit, anything like that, but you essentially apply in the sense of like you fill out paperwork, and if there's space, like you're in. And yeah, so it's a unique little bubble of its own for sure.
Yeah, yeah. When I was looking into it, I used to teach in PG County, so I think the teacher in
Okay.
it was trying to figure out how the school was ran.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely different than DC. I don't feel like, aside from like KIP and those bigger networks, you don't see as many like individual networks as much here as there are in Chicago.
okay, okay, okay. And let's talk about your time at Woodlawn Charter. You definitely built the winning culture there.
Yeah, it was some of the great moments of my life for sure.
Okay,
It I started my first 2 years that I was coaching there. The first year I was there, I was doing the freshman team, and then like freshman JV, and then the second year was just straight up assistant to the boys varsity head coach. And it was interesting because at that time, after that first season that I was there, I eligibility was a huge issue. And so what made our school a little bit different than all the other CPS schools, like you would literally have to take a sheet of paper that has like all your kids' grades at that time, like an hour before the game starts, to be like, they're passing all of their classes at this moment, they're eligible,
okay,
like an eligibility, and like you would have to exchange that. Which not a lot of other schools had to do, but our school had to do that in particular. So
okay.
eligibility was constantly a struggle because, I mean, as you know, and you're an educator too, kids' grades can constantly, like one assignment, 1 0 can just,
Yeah,
so it
zero.
gets a
It
lot.
changes everything.
Exactly. Or if you're absent or if you're sick. And so I'm over here like teaching my 7th grade science, but also checking my boys' grades and making sure they got like different assignments. Like we're checking it every hour on the hour, making sure everything is good so that they could play. So after my first year, it was just a lot of ineligibility issues with
Okay.
the freshmen and the sophomores. And so I had asked our athletic director if the varsity coach could use some help. And I mean, we didn't really he was only the athletic director for a year, but he didn't agree with how hard I was on a lot of the boys. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. You're going to have to talk to him. He's going to have to approve that." And I talked to him, and it was one of my boys that's a math
Yeah,
teacher. And I was just like, "Hey, do you need help?" And he's like, "Yes, definitely." I don't even know why this is a question. Like,
yeah.
come on. Because we would hoop all the time when the kids would leave early. Like, we would have like a teacher session. So he really helped me get my foot in the door as far as like giving me like an opportunity and accepted me. He's like, "Look, he hadn't really done a ton of formal coaching. So he deferred to me in areas where he didn't feel as confident, and we had a good vibe." And then it just happened to be that next year that he ended up taking a job at another school, and this
Okay.
vacancy popped up, and the new athletic director was like, "It's yours if you want it. We don't even need to hold like don't need to accept any other applications. Just like, you want it, it's yours. And I'm like, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But no, then I took it and it was great. So I was really fortunate to be at that school for sure.
Okay. Now, again, I do want to, like, you built the team, took them to the playoffs, most wins in the season. What was that? What was that turnaround like for the team?
Yeah. So when it really just started with me setting the tone early on. From those first 2 years that I was coaching there, and like I just talked about, eligibility was going to be a huge barrier, and so I kind of wanted to eliminate as much of that as possible. So we would have these like assemblies every morning, like whole school assemblies every single morning, and so a couple months before the season started, I get up and I'm just like, hey, anybody going out for boys basketball in high school, just know, like, here are the grades you need to have at tryout time. And we didn't have D's. That was the other thing that's like, so I was like 2 C minuses at the most, and then everything above. Like, that's what gets you in the door for me to even look at you. And so I kind of said my piece. That obviously eliminated, well, I think I still had over 50 guys try out for varsity alone, but that cut it down from, it could have been, close to 100 guys at that time. And so after setting that tone and finding my team and finding all of the pieces, I think a lot of it was just consistency. Like, we were on a really strict schedule. Like, everything was destined for us to fail. Like, on top of just like the ridiculous eligibility rules, our gym in our school building was not regulation size. It was like, think middle school, smaller gym. So we would have to walk literally 3 blocks in the snow to the YMCA for like reserving a court that they could give to us. But like, then imagine the track upstairs. So it's just like the echo, and then 1,000 little kids running around, like around the outside of your practice. Like, there is no like privacy. And it was just like, that was our norm. And it was just, it was an interesting experience. But like, we had study halls regularly. We ate lunch together. We had like, I was just going out of pocket, bringing food to them after school, after games, whatnot. And so I think all of that worked together to make sure that they were successful. And then I brought in my friends and, my now husband and like our group of friends to like scrimmage them. So I'm like, all right, we're just going to play against grown men. And that's what we're just going to do constantly. And you're just going to get demolished the first couple times till you figure it out, because I was just reffing at that point. And, and so like there was a lot of little pieces like that. And I was just consistent as far as just kind of how I was disciplining and what we were doing. And it worked. And it was great. And I wouldn't have traded it for anything in the world. They hated me because I instituted like Fun Fridays, which I still do now with my guys, where it's just like, at that time I was like counting all of like missing assignments, number of Fs, like whatever it was, anything that was just not great for your grades. And I just counted them up as a team, and we just did laps in the building with the stairs, with just like all kinds of stuff. So it was just that kind of mentality to like, look, this is what our goal is. We want to be good. I think before that, the most games any team had won was 2. And so I was like, oh, we just got to beat 2. And then and we did more. So that was cool.
Okay. The decision to come here, was it an easy decision for you?
No. It was hard. Like, my husband got a job offer. So he's finishing up grad school, and he got a job offer literally the day of like our state playoff game to come to Georgetown. And it was an easy decision in the sense of like, we had been in Chicago for a while. This was something new for us in our personal lives. For my professional coaching life, I was like, I just was able to do something that no one else at the school has done before. And then I can continue it on, and this is the perfect setup. So that part always like hurt a little something deep, and like telling the guys like, hey, next year I won't be here. I didn't get to see some of the guys graduate. That part was hard because I felt like I was just starting to carve, my place in the city. And the city's so big, you can have so many different bubbles in the city of Chicago. And so in my mind, I was going to live in Chicago forever. I was going to move from this school to that school. And then eventually I was going to like lead this like prestigious program in the city. And I'm like, no, you're going to Maryland. You're going to the DMV area and you're going to figure it out. So it worked out though. It worked out.
Okay. Were you the only women's head coach for boys basketball in Chicago?
There was another. So there was a piece that was written in the Tribune, and there was another at a private school. She was on like a freshman team. I was the only like varsity head coach in the city of Chicago for boys basketball. She was like the freshman coach at Mount Carmel, and so we never got a link, but that was the only one I had known of since reading that article for sure.
Okay. All right. So now you're in Maryland. How did Springbrook come about? How did that connection happen?
So this is like another one of those, right when I first started teaching and how I like took a break and I was like, okay, you're just going to focus on this one. I like in my mind, I envisioned that when I came out to Maryland, I was like, just take a year, like learn about like the area. And then I think I like got here and like week 2, I was like, I need to be in the gym. Like what's going on? So it really kind of started from me looking at all 25 schools, high schools in MCPS and just kind of figuring out, all right, without any prior knowledge, like what is the basketball scene like in MCPS? Like what are the good schools of basketball? What are the best? So I'm like going through like past records and like seeing, okay, which ones are historically good? Which ones are like, you would do a lot of rebuilding there. So from there, I kind of narrowed the list down and reached out to a couple of schools and directly to head coaches or to the athletic directors, literally from emails. I'm like pulling off the internet, like, hey, you want to get a chance to like talk? I'm new. Here's my resume. I'm coming from Chicago. Would love to like talk to you about your team and possibly like be put on your staff. And I had one meeting. The vibe wasn't there. It didn't seem like I was being received as well as I felt like I should. And so I was like, all right, not gonna let that discourage me. And then I emailed Coach Myers, Coach D at Springbrook, and he called, or he gave me his number to like call him. So I was like, all right. And he was like, all right, if you could come by in like 30 minutes, that works. And I just happened to live like a mile from Springbrook. So I was like, get in my car. And then despite the phone call, which he never acknowledges to this day, I show up and he's basically like, who are you? And I'm like, we just talked on the phone, Coach D. What do you mean? He's like, you sure you didn't mean to call the girls, coach? And I'm like, yes, come on. And he's just like, all right. And so then we were like talking in his office for like an hour or so. And he was like, all right, like, here's what we got. Is this what you want? And I was like, yeah, this would be great. And so from there, I was kind of just tagging along with everything, just trying to learn and understand where I was at. So yeah, that's what happened.
Okay. And so you immediately took over JV. Is that what happened in boys JV?
No, my first year, that's when we had Matt and Sam and Cam and Tony and all of them. So we had a big group of seniors. And so we already had a JV coach at the time. So I was just his assistant coach for Varsity. I worked strictly with Varsity that first year. And then the next year is when I took over the JV program.
Okay. And what was like one of the first things you noticed different about, the basketball scene in the DMV compared to Chicago?
So I think like the first thing I just noticed in this area was how deep the Catholic school, private school programs are. And just, I was like, because in Chicago, that's not the case at all. It's like, you get to go there, but like it's not about them at all. It's about like these schools on the south and west side of Chicago, like this, mostly black, all that. Like Kenwood, Curie, all those schools. And so here I'm like that. Oh, okay. This is, and then figuring out the different like WCAC, and then you have then PG is a different thing. Yeah, like then there's like there's all of PG, which is just, you look at it on a map, and I'm like, PG is huge. So then it felt like there was just like 1,000 worlds crammed into this tiny area. So I'm just like, oh man, there's a lot of research to do to just figure it out. So that was just like the biggest thing was just like there's a lot, and the Baltimore basketball is totally different than what's down here. And so it was, my husband went to high school and college out in this area, so like him, his friends were able to kind of fill me in on just what I didn't know at the time.
Yeah. All right, so how were your first few years working at Springbrook?
It was good. I mean, in the spirit of continuing to run around, my first 2 years that I was coaching there, I was teaching at Argyle Middle School. So I'm running back and forth from Argyle to Springbrook. And then my second year that I was coaching at Springbrook was also the same year I took over the boys basketball program at Argyle. And it was a situation where I had found out like they needed a coach. They hadn't had a good boys coach at Argyle for a long time. And so it was like, all right, I'll do it. And then I found out about the JV position, and it was just, I didn't want to put them back in the same situation at the middle school with not having a good coach or finding somebody last minute. So I was like, you're just going to suffer through. You're going to do both, and it's going to be fine. And there's only luckily like 3 games that overlapped where I ran from one middle school game to a high school game on the same day. But they were successful. The middle school team lost one game. They were 5-1, and we had a huge improvement from the first year I took over JV to this past season. I think there's just like a learning curve, and not being in the building, not being there with the boys during the day wasn't as helpful as I wanted it to be. This past year was great in the sense of the boys could be in my classroom during lunch. I could help them with literally helping them with school stuff. We can have study hall. We can make sure that we're having all the academic things taken care of, and I'm there with you. I can see you in the hallway. I'm here with you. And so that, I think, completely kind of changed what that culture was like this past year. And so I definitely think it made us a more tight-knit group. And then it translated on the basketball court. We were a lot more successful this past year, and I don't think that's anything. I think that can all be attributed to that, and the guys just really buying in and being like, "Yeah, we're here all the time."
Yeah. And I think I talked to Coach Jennifer down in Huntington and Calvert County, and he's also a teacher within his school, and we talked about how being there makes such a big difference with the relationship and the bonding and all of that. So that's definitely a big help.
Yeah, it definitely changed. I mean, I didn't have a lot of them in the classroom, but just little things like they need advice on, or they're having an issue with a teacher or a class, and they could just come to a safe space, which is my classroom, and get the help they needed, and then we could switch it to basketball the minute it's 3:00. So it was great. So I think this past year was just the cherry on top for sure, and I'm just excited to keep moving forward with teams in the same building.
Yeah. So y'all were JV team 14-3. Are you losing a lot of those players to varsity this upcoming year?
Yes, all of them. 2 of them are returning, and the rest are gonna be gone. And it's just gonna be my life for a little while I'm with JV, just knowing that there's gonna be this constant turnover. But yeah, we're gonna be listening a lot. But I've already heard from some guys that are entering as freshmen that are yeah, I'm coming to Springbrook, and they're some of the same guys that I got to check out during the season, at middle school games. So I'm feeling really excited. In my mind, I'm oh, we're going to be younger, so that means we'll have more energy to run defense. So.
Well, Springbrook has a great tradition, so I feel like you'll get some talent for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think that's one of the things I learned early on about Springbrook. Is that we're in that consortium, Springbrook, Paint Branch, Blake now with Coach Wade there. It's just there's a good name and a good reputation kind of around our consortium, so there's a lot of interest in going into these schools, and so which is great, and I love it, and I hope it continues.
So let's go to varsity a little bit. Varsity team makes it to the state semifinals, and then COVID happens. What was that like?
Oh my God! So So I've developed a pretty good friendship with Coach Wade at Blake, and so I like to give him a hard time because we knocked them out
Yeah.
to get to where we're at, and he was just so happy with not with COVID striking, but with just the fact that our games weren't able to be played at the state level. But it was surreal. Like I remember when we were playing that last game to qualify for state. I'd never seen a gym so packed on a Saturday, like a Saturday afternoon. I think our game was at like 1:30, and those last couple of games, those like playoff games leading up to that, there was this weird, like it was a mixture of excitement, but a little bit of nervousness. And so, you know, some of the varsity guys would come to my classroom to just like after school hang out, like I'm grading papers and they're just sitting there. And like, I remember like one of our seniors specifically, this is the day that we're getting ready to play Blake, and he's just sitting there, and I'm like, the game's not till 7. I'm like, so you don't plan to go home? And they're all like, well, no, by the time we get home and get settled and then eat and then sleep, and we'll be here. And I'm like, that's 5 hours from now. So we're just going to hang out for 5 hours. Got it. And so he's just like on his phone, like watching like Wild 'N Out videos, like consistently. I'm hearing it in the background. I'm like, what are you like? Can you do anything else? He's like, I got to keep my mind off of basketball. Like if I don't do this, I'm gonna be thinking about the game, and then if I start thinking about the game, I'm gonna be overthinking it during the game, and like that was his thing. And so I think that perfectly kind of summed up what everybody's feeling like. And that's from like students and staff that may or may not have gone to a lot of games. They're just we feel this excitement bubbling up. Like, okay, we could do it. Yeah. All right, we beat them. All right, we're one step closer. Like we could do it, and then we did it, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. We're prepping for state. And I remember it was right before 7th period, the last period of the day. I'm like, that's like one of my periods off. I'm like, finishing packing my bags. Like they told us it's limited attendance. Like you have your one person on the list. That's it. And then it was like maybe 40 minutes before school ended. And it was just like, all right, cancel. I'm like, what do you mean cancel? This is Thursday. Yeah. We're still coming to school on Friday. So it was just a lot of like frustration and, you know, anger on for a lot of the boys. I felt bad for the seniors. Because I mean, as adults, like we know there's no way this thing just clears up in 2 weeks and then we come back.
Yeah, so I think that was something, you know, that really hurt because they were like, oh, we'll be back in 2-3 weeks and it'll happen. And it's just like you said, as an adult, and like you're seeing what's going on, like it's no way.
And even in my mind, I'm just like, let's just say 2 weeks would have happened. You would have been so out of shape in those 2 weeks. It would have been the sloppiest basketball game if they told us no one can go into the gym and then we just show up at state. Like, and you know, I think there was a county excitement because us and Richard Montgomery had made it to the Final Four, and so there was like a really strong chance. I mean, I thought we would have won. So there's a really strong chance that like an MCPS school would have came out with the title, but. You know, it's one of those things we'll never know.
Yeah. It definitely left, you know, a lot of question marks there that just never get solved. So let's go, and like you talked about this in a dry erase board interview. Mm-hmm. What is it like being a woman being a boys basketball coach in Maryland?
It is interesting. At least, okay, so I think the biggest difference from my time in Chicago to here is, since this is a smaller place, mm-hmm. we see a lot of the same refs, like, regularly. I'm like, oh, yeah, I had that guy at this game that one time. Like, I'm not really seeing new faces. And so that's the toughest part for me, being, like, a woman in this position, is that I'm already feeling in the back of my mind that there are questions, and there's like a little bit of, what are you doing here? Should you be here? Do you know what you're doing? And then the game starts, and I mean, I take everything to offense. Like if I'm not heard, I'm irritated, I'm upset. And I think that that's my biggest struggle as a woman coaching here, is feeling like I always kind of have to prove myself, right? But I can't prove myself by being the loudest, because I'm never going to be the loudest. You're never going to hear me. But it's this constant questioning down to the fact of like you're questioning like actual basketball rules, and I'm like, that's not even a rule. Like, how we
Yeah,
can't change the game just because you may not like me or you're upset with seeing me in this position. And so this season, that's kind of why I took it such like to heart. Like, our goal is to, I mean, obviously there's like respect the game, respect each other, respect your opponent. But then I'm also like, I want you to destroy every team, because like I
yeah,
don't ever want it to get to this point where a call from a referee can mess things up. I don't ever want to put it in the ref's hands. And
yeah,
I tell my guys straight up, like, that's gonna be the last thing you're ever gonna want. You don't want it because like we will never win that fight.
yeah, yeah,
So we always have to work harder. We always have to be better. We got to be more prepared so that I still might be yelling at a referee if we're up 20 or 30 points in a game. And that's just because I feel like there are rules and they need to be followed. But no matter what I do, it's not going to impact your outcome as the players of this team. So I think that's just the biggest issue I consistently run into, is just there's like this weird clash that happens with me and referees. I haven't quite figured out in 10 years what the issue is, but one day I'm going to figure it out.
Oh, it's going to happen. I mean, I just think people, as men, like men have to get used to things being the way it is. Like, I don't, it's just something as a collective men have to do. It's just something that has to happen.
I would love for men to be better. And like, I feel like the treatment I usually get from like other coaches, I'm no qualms, right? Like I'm never feeling like other coaches are doing anything. I feel like there's like a respect there because they understand, hey, I might have had to go through a whole lot to get this job. I can only imagine what she had to do. And there's like a mutual respect there.
Right.
But yeah, with the referees, I'm just like, I don't even know what I can do to please you sometimes. And sometimes there's no answer. And so I just take it super personal when I start to feel like you're intentionally trying to affect the outcome of this game for whatever your bias or your anger is towards me. And so just try not to let them get away with it.
Yeah. No, understand. So now you've been in Maryland a few years. A lot of people, I just wanted to ask this. A lot of people, I hear people saying Chicago is kind of like, sort of like a mecca of basketball. But just from your opinion, do you think there's better basketball here or in Chicago?
If we're just talking public schools, Chicago hands down.
Okay.
But I also think it's a little bit of an unfair fight because there's like over 400,000 students in CPS, and so there's a difference there. But I just think that it's in the water in Chicago in a way that I can't express here. I think at least in Montgomery County, in Maryland, there might be a little bit more privilege that you don't necessarily see in Chicago. So like they might be going to the rec here and waiting for times to just shoot around, where in Chicago they're filling up all the outdoor basketball courts. It's like, no, ball is life, like literally. So I just think that there's just a lot of hidden talent in Chicago. I think here it's really hard to be talented and to stay in that public school system without getting snatched up. But there is a great deal of talent here too. It's just different. So I gotta rock with Chicago on that one.
We're gonna have to just agree to disagree on that one.
Give me a couple more years, and I might change my answer.
Yeah, that's I was like, you get a few more years and you'll see. Like,
yeah, I was there for 10 years. To be fair, I saw 10 years of basketball.
Oh yeah. 3 is the max though. If you don't change your mind to 3, that's why.
Okay. All right. Let me write that
down. Have you thought about hopping into the AAU scene here?
I did. So after the dry erase board conversation, it's got me thinking more about that. It's just, as I look at different schools and coaches, like since then, I've been able to connect with a lot of different coaches online, on Twitter, and just kind of see what they're about. And I swear it's like everyone's tagline at the top is like head coach or, JV coach at this school, team takeover, or team Durant, or team, just like assistant. So I think that that's going to be something that I'm like going to strongly consider. I think what has held me back a little bit is myself. Since I teach during the year, I really look forward to the summers to like unwind, decompress, especially with everything that's going on with how we ended this last school year and the question marks surrounding next school year, I'm like, I couldn't even imagine working right now and thinking about distance learning, in-person learning during this time. And so I think I'm slowly starting to get over that hump because we do summer league. And so I'm just like, all right, it's a similar amount of time you're committing to that. So I'm definitely a little bit more open to it just to see what it's like. And I think a lot of coaches that I talked to recommended it as like building relationships and like getting to know other coaches, other programs. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Did Montgomery County, did they make a decision about school in the fall yet?
I mean, no, nothing definitive. They just
Okay.
said like,
Okay.
okay, the plan is to start online, and I think with PG coming out and just being like everything's online until like at the latest, or at the earliest February, I think that's shifted some conversations. So now
Okay.
like we're getting emails and phone calls saying, take another survey, let's figure out what we need to do. So
Got it.
nothing definitive, no.
Okay. Okay. Do you personally have any goals? Like, do you have any shorts, like 3 to 5 year goals of where you want to be in your coaching career?
Yeah, I think my first thing, like the thing on my radar for sure, is just getting back into a head coaching position for varsity team.
Yeah.
I like where I'm at, but obviously at the end of the day, that turnover is never going to change for me, and so I don't want to be in this position where I'm constantly like working with a new group of guys every year, every other year. I would like there to be a little bit more of a consistency there, and just getting back to varsity. But I've seen how the grass can be greener on the other side, being a teacher in the same building as you coach, and so now it's like a package deal. It's like, well, I don't want to do the running around anymore. I want to coach
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's a lot to ask as a woman asking for this, and to a new principal would be like, hey, do you have a biology and a head basketball coach like position? And so that's still the goal though. I'm still
Okay.
looking and just seeing like, I'm taking note of what's changing. But yeah, that's really just what is on my mind for now.
Okay. Okay. Um, Another thing, I really love the interview that you had with Dry Erase Board. You made a great like how you relate to the players in another way.
Yeah.
Can you explain that again?
Yeah. So I think relationships are big for me, and I already know coming into the scene that there is a little bit of the winning over the boys piece, right? Until they get to know me, until my name is kind of built up wherever we are. There's
Mm-hmm.
all right, you got to learn who I am, and I got to learn who you are, and you got to get past me being a woman, which I think that all the boys that I've coached do very quickly, and I just think that kind of has to do with my personality. So I definitely try to set the tone by letting them all know that I can shoot better than them. It's like, you might be taller and stronger. I will destroy you in any
Yeah.
shooting contest. So like, I'm just, I'm throwing that energy out there, and it garners some respect. And then they hear me, okay, breaking things down. Then we obviously talk about basketball players we like, it NBA, gets into the NBA and all of that. And it just starts from there. And I think that's kind of the consistent starting point, is I have to let them know that I can still play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I let them know that and I show that, then it's like, oh, okay, she can shoot. Okay,
Yeah.
let me take her tips on shooting. And then they see, oh, I'm shooting better. Okay, all right, let's see where this thing goes. This year, and just kind of in the past, like I used that time in my classroom as just times for us to like really get to know each other. Like we've had game nights, we've had like, team dinners and whatnot, but
Mm-hmm.
lunch this year, we'll throw up like this website called Sporkle, which is just random trivia. And I'll just pick something sports related, and we're just all doing it young on the TV, like watching videos, and they see me as a person.
Right.
And I also have been told by my husband that I might have the personality of a 17-year-old boy. Like I just like kid stuff. Like I'm just like into that kind of world. And so that really just helps strengthen the relationship that we have. And they see me, but also, I can go to her for advice. I can go to her. She knows what she's talking about, in these worlds. And we had debates, like it just can go anywhere. And so I like the fact that
Yeah.
it's so open-ended with them.
Okay. Do you have you still like are y'all on like Zoom calls with the players and everything? Still keeping in consistent contact?
Yeah, so for me, it's a little bit difficult. Like I've passed the torch in a way with a lot of them to Coach D and getting them ready for varsity. So it's hard because, like I said, I had two of my guys returning, and the rest are just unknowns at this point. And
Okay.
if so, we still have like a group chat that runs with my team from this past season. We use the Band app, which is just like
Yeah.
great for like
Yeah.
information and stuff. So we did that towards the end of the school year. We had a Zoom call because I wanted to know, like, really understand kind of how the county was grading things, because I was hearing from a lot of different students that there's a lot of misconceptions. So I just like sat them all down, like, look, here's what you need to do. This is the option you need to take, and giving them that advice and calling them up
Yeah.
one by one. So a lot of the relationships are now just like texting and talking to them, seeing how, making sure they're working out. And again, these are guys that are moved. They're not in my hands anymore. They're going off to varsity, but I just want to make sure that they're straight and good moving forward. So
Okay. Okay. I mean, and then just to end it off on this, I know the goal is to win a championship. Next season there's a season. What is one of the most like? What's something you're extremely looking? What are you looking forward to returning?
I think, like, yeah, the big goal is to obviously win a championship, and I think that the guys that we have varsity super capable of doing that. I think for me at JV, like, my big goals of the season, on top of like dominating, is really geared towards Paint Branch and Blake. Like, that's really where a lot of my energy goes, because those are like the most hyped up games. Like, those games sell out when our game is starting,
Okay.
and the gym is packed. And so that's like this season, like when we played Blake and we went on buzzer beater the first game, it was like people are storming the court for a JV game, right? And so, like, I put a lot of energy into those games for my guys, because that's the one they're gonna get the most shook on. That's the one where they're like, well, I've never seen this many people watch me
Yeah.
play before. Like, I
Yeah.
want you to get used to that and like rise to the occasion. So I definitely always have those games circled on my calendar. This year we didn't lose to either of them, both the times we played them. So we were 4-0. So like that's my short term goal, is like make sure that we start to establish that inner consortium dominance.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Coach T, I definitely appreciate you joining us this evening, and definitely best of luck next year and whenever the season returns.
Whenever. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and stay safe out here. And I wish you the best of luck.
All right, thank you. Do you do the same?
Thank you.